So I'm joined by Andre Haykal Jr., the founder of Liskit, Client Ascension, Knowledge X. Andre, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, bro. Happy to be here. Andre. Great name.
Great name. Might sound very overwhelming for someone your age, because you're very young as well to be running three companies. You want to kind of give us a perspective of what made you, let's say, aim that big.
Yeah, bro. So fast or going all the way back to when I first started in entrepreneurship was really when I was a kid. Reason for that was because the two biggest influences in my life, my grandpa, my dad, were both entrepreneurs. So my dad was born in Lebanon, and he moved over to the U.S. at an early age because of the war in Lebanon. And he really struggled all throughout school. But one thing he did really well in was entrepreneurship. So he started a restaurant right out of school, and then he joined a company as a salesperson and opened up markets all throughout the U.S. for them, and then started some of his own companies, and then got into real estate investing. So really cool story there. So I grew up watching my dad, be a successful entrepreneur and all the luxuries of lifestyle that come with that. Freedom to make your own schedule, being able to, be at small things like sporting events of the kids growing up, and just being able to have a lot of kids as well and support each and every one of them. And then my grandpa, same thing. He actually grew up a lot more poor than my dad and my family grew up, but he found entrepreneurship later on in his life in his 50s and 60s, and had a ton of success later on in his life. Exited a couple of companies, had exits that were worth over $100 million, and so he was super successful. And my family is a big family that benefited from my grandpa and my dad's success. So I was always inspired by like what they were able to do for the family. And so I always wanted to be next in line, like the next entrepreneur in the family. So that was where my big goals and ambitions really came from. And so I started entrepreneurship at a young age and kind of found myself where I'm at now, running multiple businesses.
Very nice. Yeah, it always goes to show your kids are always going to look up to someone. It might as well be you. Like, there are not very good examples out there in the world. How did you get started in this online business space? That's where you make.
Yeah, so the first taste of online business success that I had was with reselling sneakers, which wasn't really online business, but like I would use softwares on the computer to get a lot of limited edition pairs of sneakers. Um, and then I would resell them for more money than I bought them for. And so that was all throughout high school and college that basically continued to pay my bills, which was not much. I was living at home, and so I was able to. I had a lot of cash, more than my friends in high school and college at the time. So that was really nice. I never really had to get like a 9 to 5 office job because that kept the money coming in consistently enough. And then once I got into college, I wanted to create like an actual business because I realized that like buying and selling sneakers was not a business. It was just like the flip life, as Gary Vee
Yeah.
calls it. And so, what business could I roll those skill sets and that profit into? It was an agency, but the way I found the agency model was through podcasting, actually. So, Christian and I, my business partner now, and all the things that we do together, we met back in college. And basically, we just hit it off right away because we were both very entrepreneurial minded. We were interested in things that we weren't learning in school. We didn't really care to get a job or an internship with like a big finance company. We wanted to do something different because we saw like my dad and my grandpa and all these personalities online that were succeeding outside of just like the typical 9 to 5 route that our college friends were going through. And so we started a podcast. We just wanted to interview people that were doing online business successfully, and figure out what the heck are they doing that we're not doing. Um, and so we started the podcast, interviewed a bunch of people, and realized that there was a common trend that these people were running agencies. And so the agency model instantly to us made a lot of sense because it was very, low cost to get started, and it just required us to have a skill set. So that's essentially how we started like our first agency business was through the podcast. We interviewed a bunch of agency owners, and then through doing the podcast and interviewing people, we had now a skill set, which is what an agency really is. It's just you selling a skill set. We had a skill set that people wanted, which was being able to produce and come up with strategies for podcasts and being able to do social media marketing because that's what we did to grow our podcast at the time. We also had other services like being able to make a really nice website for our podcast. And this was 5 or 6 years ago. So not everyone was doing web design
Mhm.
agencies or social media marketing agencies. This was like very new. And so it was very easy for us to enter the market with these services as a new agency.
What do you think were the skill sets that you brought from the reselling business that helped you on the agency side at the beginning days?
It was definitely marketing. So on the sneaker reselling game, the best thing that helped me was how to put together an eBay listing. So I would get a limited edition pair of sneakers, but so would 1,000 other people. So if me and 1,000 other people all have the same product and we're all trying to sell it on eBay, how am I going to get my product to sell when all the others are the same product? Well, I have to have the best pictures on my eBay listing, and then I have to have the best title, and then I have to have the best description, and then I have to price it in a way that's attractive to the market, maybe a little bit below what the rest of the market is charging, or maybe higher. And the reason it's higher is because the overall post on eBay, like the pictures, the title, the description, are higher quality, so it's more believable. There's more trust built up. And so like just putting together an eBay listing back in the day really helped me to understand like how to stand out in crowded markets. That was probably the biggest thing that translated over. And then just marketing, like being able to do marketing for reselling, because I would resell like add to cart slots, they were called, and proxies and sneaker softwares and bots. And the way you would do that is just through marketing. And it was marketing on Twitter actually. So back in the day when I was doing sneaker reselling, we used to refer to it as sneaker Twitter. Now we call it money Twitter. So it's a really similar vibe where it's just this little corner of Twitter with a bunch of people that we're all doing the same thing, buying and reselling sneakers and just talking about reselling sneakers. And so because I had experienced growth there, I grew a couple accounts on sneaker Twitter, and the business profiles on Twitter were pretty huge, and that's how we got all of our clients. I knew exactly what to do when I found money Twitter. It's just the same strategy.
Yeah.
Connect with a bunch of people, provide a really good service, post a bunch of content, sell, sell, sell. Like anytime I had something to sell on Twitter, like you can't just put out one tweet and expect people to buy it from you. You have to constantly be tweeting about it. So if you look up on my Twitter now, like if you search for my name and then list kit as a keyword, like I'm talking about list kit multiple times every single day. So all these things really carried over to what I do now with ListKit and with the agency with Client Ascension. So it's cool to see.
Nice. We're gonna get into those in a bit, but I want to clarify something. There's a misconception with people who watch these types of videos that, yeah, I just need to do this 2, 3, 4 months. I'll be making very good money, which is not true. We both know it takes a lot of time, not to make money, but to actually get good at what you are doing, so you can have confidence and scale up. How long did it take you guys with the agency to actually start seeing good success? And
Yeah,
what are
so
the
for the
steps?
agency, it was an instant success. I mean, we would sell a website and then we would not have anything for a couple of months. And then we'd sell like a social media growth package and then we wouldn't have anything for a couple of months. So there was no consistency with getting clients. Most of our clients actually came from the podcast. We'd interview someone, they would, compliment us on the job that we did with growing our own podcast and getting them on the podcast, and then they would ask us if we could help them with like their website or their social media. But that wasn't very consistent. So we probably ran the agency, and I say it's an agency. There was not really like a legitimate business behind it. It was just whenever there was a project for Christian and I to do to make money on the side, because we were still in college. Like this was when we first got to college, which we finished all the way through. We both got degrees. We didn't like drop out right away or anything. But when there was an opportunity to do work like that, we just took it. We got the money. We didn't really care how much we were getting paid. It was more so just being able to learn the skill set and get the experience. And that's kind of how it went. So it wasn't really an agency for a while, and then we started an agency with a partner, and started to make that into like a real company and grew that. It took us like 2 years, bro, like literally 2 years from when we started to when we we didn't exit it. We actually had like a business breakup where we split with the partner that we were running that agency with, and it took us 2 years to go from zero to $20,000. It was like $21,000 a month in revenue, and then we split from the partner, so we lost it all. So we worked 2 years to build up to $21,000 a month, and then we split with the business partner and lost it all overnight and had to start again from zero. And when we started again from zero, that's when we started Knowledge X, which took 3 years to get to $100,000 a month. So it's been a long journey from reselling sneakers, going all the way back to when I was 16. So this has been like an 8 year journey for me, selling sneakers and then doing the podcast and then doing agency projects on the side and then growing an agency and then splitting from that agency, starting over with Knowledge X, and then now doing Client Ascension, and then after Client Ascension, doing List Kit. So everyone sees, like you said, all the things I'm doing now, but they don't realize that I've been in the game for 8 years. So it's not like new for me.
Yeah. So you spoke about one partner, so Christian. Right now you have two more partners, which is both Dennis. Here, 200. The two partners is two Daniels. How did those come into the picture? And when was the period? 'Cause I imagine all of that, you said 8 years, but it went on very quick. When did you look back at what you were building and you're like, okay, I actually have something very special here? Let's triple down.
Yeah, the moment I realized like we're on the right path and doing all the right things is like, so the business split was difficult because that's when we really started to see like, oh, this is a real business. We're working with clients, we're getting consistent revenue. We have team members now that are working with us, and then the business split. So that was really difficult for us because it was unexpected. We weren't really prepared for it, and it was just a lot of work that we had done that all pretty much disappeared. Um, and then it wasn't until like after that that I realized how good of a job we've done to build up that agency and how lucky we were to have the opportunity to do it again from scratch with the team that we had. So I've just been really lucky. I think when I look back at the success and when I've realized like we're doing all the right things was when I realized like the core of me, Dan, Christian, and now Daniel, and even Oliver from Listkit, like how well we all work together. That's when I realized like, okay, like we are going to be wildly successful together. Like the team that we have, nobody's going to be able to compete with this team. And that is when I realized how successful I was because I knew, and this was pretty early on too. Like it wasn't like very recently that I realized this. It was like when we first started Knowledge X, when we first started Client Ascension, when we first started ListKit, like I knew the team involved was our competitive advantage, and now I'm seeing that obviously come true with the results and the success that we've been able to have. Um, so that's really where it comes from. Is as soon as I had that core team, and as soon as I could see like there's only so much I could do myself to grow a business, and now that I have someone like Daniel who's just the goat at marketing, and then Dan who's like the goat at sales, and Christian who's like the goat copywriter, and Oliver who's the goat CTO and developer team leader, I knew that we'd be able to do something special in all the projects that we're working on because I don't have to be good at all those other things that I know I'm not good at, but are required to be good at to grow a successful business. So that's really when it clicked for me was when I saw that what is actually required to grow a business is all these different skill sets that I only have, a couple of them myself, but my business partners have what I don't have, and so that's why it works so well.
Yeah. And you started client session to maybe not maybe, to teach other people how to do the same that you did. And how did Listkit come about? And can you tell us a little bit about that company? Is it still new?
Yeah, absolutely, bro. So ListKit is like new, but not really. Cause so we started ListKit, and this is why it's funny. It's like not even just the overall story of I started 8 years ago, but like ListKit as well, like is not new. It started in July 2022. So in July this year, it'll be 2 years old, right? Which is like most people think it's new, like it just came out last year, but that's not true. So we started it. The reason we started Client or List Kit is because when we were running our agency Knowledge X, the biggest bottleneck that we had at our agency was building the leads list for our clients because we were doing cold email outreach as a service. The leads list took forever because you had to go through Apollo and get 25 leads at a time, put them into a spreadsheet. Once they're in a spreadsheet, you had to then put them through an email verifier. Once they're through the email verifier, you have to get all the ones that aren't invalid. Once you do that, you have to see how many leads you have. A lot of the times you didn't have as many leads as you thought you were going to have. So then you have to go back at the start of the process, do it all over again until you get however many leads you want to get. And it just took forever. Like it was so manual, and it was just slowing our ability to fulfill clients. And so I really focused on that for like a month. Like, how can we make this process super dialed, super simple, super seamless? And we figured it out. We cracked the code. We put really good systems in place, SOPs. We hired really talented people to run it, and our agency was able to get that dialed. Um, and once that was dialed, I realized that every other agency owner had the same problem that we had with our agency and with the leads list building. And so what we did is we just offered that same list building service that we were doing for our agency clients to other agency owners because we knew that they were also struggling. Um, and so yeah, that was how ListKit happened. Was we realized that a big bottleneck for people was building leads lists when it didn't have to be. So it started as a service, and then once we started the service, we were like, well, we already have a service business in Knowledge X. We're doing an agency. Like, I don't want to create another agency. What's one thing we don't have is a SaaS or a software. And so, how can we build a SaaS or a software that's like Apollo, but it doesn't have all the things that people hate about the Apollo, which is like export limits, the emails aren't verified, it's expensive, right? All these things. And so we started to work on a software that would do all the things that Apollo doesn't do that people want to do and have to go elsewhere to do, either through VAs or through other software tools like verification tools or whatnot. And that's what we came up with. And so for a year and a half, we developed the software, and then in July of last year, we actually launched the software, which is what most people know Liskit to be now, which is obviously like the app, the software app.
What has been the market feedback so far? The market feedback.
Oh, the feedback has been great. It's funny enough. I said 2022. It's 2021 when we launched. So it was actually 3 years ago this July. That list get started. But again, the software didn't launch until July of last year. So 2 years into running the business, the software then started. So the software is very new. The company's been there for a while. The market feedback though has been pretty amazing. Like, and it makes sense because it's not like we just threw this idea out there and was like, well, hopefully people want this. It's like we offered the service for since 2021 and people paid us for the service. So we knew if we just made it into a software that people can subscribe to and do on their own and pay a lot less money for. Because when we were doing the service, people were paying $1 a lead, like one full dollar a lead. And now on the software, you could get leads starting at 4 cents a lead, like, which is 25 times more expensive we were charging for the done for you service, and the quality is the same. So we knew people would go for it, and so far the feedback has been amazing, and all the feedback that we get for the most part, like we've been able to implement it pretty successfully, and come up with just improvements to the product and software to what like current users and customers actually want, and yeah, it's just been a fun process now, almost almost a year into it. In a couple of months, we'll be a year into it.
Yeah, and I think one of the factors, at least from what I see from the outside perspective, that makes you guys stand out so much is how much you dedicate yourself to the community. You're not just providing a service, you have a community, you're providing courses to help them use the platform, you're providing videos to help them use the platform, and that in the long run makes all the difference. Because if someone buys your platform, it's not okay. Now what? You even have onboarding calls if I'm not mistaken. Are you still running that?
Yeah, so everyone that signs up for ListKit, they get access to our free school community. And in our school community, we're posting in there every single day, like valuable posts. And then we have an entire cold email course for free. And then we have an entire cold calling course for free. So you don't need to pay a single dollar to get access to probably the best education that's out there if you're new to cold email, or if you're new to cold email or cold calling. Plus, you get access to like our entire team to answer questions of how to use ListKit and whatever else. And then when you sign up, you also get the opportunity to get on a one-on-one call with one of our leads list building experts, because we know that ListKit is just a tool. If you don't know how to properly use the tool, or if you're not very clear on your ICP, or the different filters to find your ICP, it's not going to be it's not going to be as useful as if you know how to use it, as like one of our experts know how to use it. So we offer one-on-one calls. If you sign up, you can sign up for our cheapest plan for $79 a month. You'll get offered to go on a one-on-one call with one of our leads list building experts. So that's available to any user, which I think is pretty cool too.
Extremely valuable. Yeah, we'll leave some links down below. I want to ask you a question. This is more for myself rather than the viewer. Like a lot of, say, people that own agencies, couple of paths they can then progress to is educational or software. What do you see the differences being running an educational business versus a software business? Which one do you personally enjoy the most?
So the cool thing is, if you build it the way we have, they work together. So ListKit goes really nicely with our education business, because our education business is teaching people how to do cold email. And if we teach people how to do cold email, they're then going to be more likely to use a tool like ListKit, because ListKit is for people who do cold email. So I think the strategy there is, you use the education company like Client Ascension and Cold Email Mastery to create customers for your software, right? Because if we didn't have the education companies, it'd be really hard to sell ListKit, because not too many people know about cold email. The reason so many people know about cold email and do cold email is because of our education company. And so it funnels in really nicely. It's just like the Russell Brunson model. It's like, not a lot of people knew what a funnel was. People knew what a website was, but very few people knew what funnels were until he started to get into coaching and education and content. And then when they discovered what a funnel was and that they needed one in their business, the same way someone discovers cold email and they realize they need to be doing it for their business, that's when they then turn to whatever software is available to help them do it easier. Like ListKit helps them do it easier than Apollo, because you don't have to verify the leads on your own. And ClickFunnels at the time was like the only software tool that allowed you to build funnels drag and drop. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, easiness. Create the problem and sell the solution.
Yeah, and so one of the questions I always get is like, you run three companies, how, like, isn't that a lot of work? How do you stay on top of everything? The way we see it is just like one big company, because they're all doing the same thing. Client Ascension's teaching people how to do cold email. KnowledgeX is doing cold email for people that don't want to learn how to do it themselves. And then ListKit is a tool that helps either KnowledgeX, the agency, to do cold email for the clients, or the students in Client Ascension to do cold email on their own. So everything flows into each other. If we get a customer for ListKit, good chance that they're eventually going to be a client for Knowledge X or a student in Client Ascension. Same way, if we get a student in Client Ascension, good chance they'll eventually become a client of our agency and a user of ListKit. You see how, like, if I get one customer in one company, they can then become a customer in the other company, and how that helps with ad spend, not needing to be super high through the roof, and so many other benefits.
And those are only three options that you're talking about. 'Cause I know you have a couple more lower ticket ones that all work together. It's kind of a cliche question, but what's your vision for the future? 5, 10, 15 years? Did continue building?
I mean, if you asked me this 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said, here's what I'm going to be doing, and it's what I'm doing today. So I'm careful to plan too far ahead, because I know it's not always going to go to plan. Like, my plan and vision for things, like, I have it, but God has a different vision for me as well, and I just want to be as on the course with that plan as possible. So even if I have a plan or something I think I want to do, if God shows me a different plan, like, I want to stay that path. And that's kind of what's happened over these years. Because, like, if you asked me 5 years ago, I was building that agency that I talked about earlier, like my plan was to continue to grow that. But like God had a different plan, right? Which is why that agency had a business split and we basically had to start from zero. That was not part of my plan, was to go from 21K a month to 0K a month overnight. But that was part of God's bigger plan, which led me here today. And so my plan for the next 5 years is to continue to show up every single day for my clients, my students, my customers, and most importantly, my team, and give them the resources and the lessons and the leadership that they need, and the tools and the products and the education that they need to get the results that they want in their life. And if I do that consistently every single day, in 5 years, who knows where this is going to take me? I know it's going to be nothing short of incredible places and things and experiences. But my plan or my big vision is literally, it's always been this: it's just to stay consistent. Again, staying consistent, doing things that serve and help and provide products and solutions and problem solvers to my customers, my users, my students, and again, most importantly, my team, because that is then who goes out and is able to impact my team, my customers, my users, my students even more.
Yeah, I think it's doing things that others aren't willing to for a long period of time. Now I'll
Yeah,
ask
it's
you.
like a so it's a cliche question, and I feel like it's a question that gets cliche answers. Like people will give you BS answers of like, oh, in 5 years I want to be at this revenue level. I want to have sold this company for this much money. I want to have this car and be living in this place. And it's like you're planning for a future that you have no idea what even tomorrow is going to look like. And it's helpful to plan. But when I plan, it's the same way I set goals. It's I plan my inputs. It's what am I going to do for the next 5 years? And then what happens based on what I do is out of my control. Like I can't control the output. That's for God to control, right? So if you're like, for me, a big part of building businesses and doing business is for the glory of God, is very in line with my faith. I feel like I can use my business skills and the gifts that I've gotten to do business well, to help people. Um, and I understand that I can do the inputs, but the outputs are not always in my control. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, because they'll set a goal of like, or an output goal of like, I want to get to 10,000 a month. And then in a month, they're not there and they get discouraged and they switch business models or they change what they do. And if they just made the simple switch of, in 30 days, I want to have sent this many cold emails. I want to I wanted to have did this many podcast interviews to learn more about how other people are having success. I want to do this many DMs to introduce myself to other successful people. Like if they come up with goals and plans that are inputs, meaning they're action items that they can control whether or not they do, as opposed to outcomes of like what happens as a result of things that they may or may not do. That simple switch is my biggest secret, if you will, for success.
Yeah, I think people are should be impatient regarding the inputs and try to delay or detach yourself from the output as much as possible. Because even if you make 10K tomorrow or 100K tomorrow, what will you be doing the next day? Still building. I'll end it with a last question, which is, in a world full of noise, even more with social media, how important do you think is to have one voice that you can trust, just the internal voice, God's voice? How do you see that?
I think that's the most important thing. I think it's a blessing and a curse that we have, such an abundance of access to information that we do now. Because you just have access to so much wisdom. But it's literally in the Bible that wisdom does not come from our own doings. So like I could read every book, listen to every podcast, be on Twitter all day long, learning from other people, but that's not where wisdom really comes from. Wisdom can only come truly from God. And I believe the way to attain wisdom from God is by praying and asking for direction and then taking action on those things. And through your actions, you'll learn the lessons you need to learn that make the next step clear and possible. Um, and so I'll obviously educate myself on what's happening and I learned from guys like Gary Vee and Patrick Bet David and Ed Milet and Alex Hormozy. These are all guys that I admire and learn from. But at the end of the day, like there's one decision maker that I am in lockstep with at every step of the way. And that helps me to stay consistent because I think consistency is really important. The problem that you run into when you start, exposing yourself to so many different people and opinions is Ed Milet might tell you to handle a situation this way, and then Gary Vee tells you to handle it a completely different way, and then you're conflicted. And when you have conflicting advice, it leads to indecision and inaction because you're not confident in either decision. Whereas if you have one voice and one decision or one piece of directive, then you can take action with full confidence that that's going to work for you. Um, so I think it's important to really narrow your focus down to the voices that to just one voice, and that's the voice I think of God. At least it's been for me.
Yeah. And shut out the noise and focus on what you're doing. 'Cause it's very difficult. You get imposter syndrome. At least I got that last year, which is I was building, then I saw something, then I heard something, and I'm like, oh, should I do this? Should I not? Yeah. Focus for a consistent long period of time, and it's inevitable that you don't become a better person. What you'll get, we'll never know. Yeah, Andre, I appreciate you. We'll leave his links down below, so your YouTube channel, Mist Kit, so you can check him out. Do you want to give any final words?
No, well, dude, thank you for having me on. Like I said, the start of my entrepreneurship journey really was when I started a podcast. And so if you're lacking direction or understanding of kind of like where to start or what opportunities are out there for you, like the one thing I would encourage all of you to do is exactly what Andre is doing here today is go out and talk to people. Talk to people that are doing things that you might want to be doing. If you see someone that's having success and you're curious, I think that the one trait that everyone needs to have, and even me at this point, is to stay curious all the time. Like I'm curious, how does that work? Or how is he doing that? Or why is he doing that? And not just sitting with those questions, but actually acting on those questions and going out and asking them and finding the answers, exactly what you're doing with the podcast. Anytime I see someone like yourself that's proactively seeking out knowledge and experience from other people, I know that they're on the right path and that they're going to have some pretty major breakthroughs. So I love what you're doing, bro. And I hope the audience, I'm sure the audience admires and appreciates you for what you're doing as well, because you're sharing other people's knowledge with them as well. So if you're along for the ride with Andre's podcast, definitely keep tuning in because this is again how I got knowledge when I first started as well. Um, and the biggest thing is once you have that knowledge, actually acting on it and putting it into practice is more important than anything else, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for the word. I appreciate you.
Likewise,
Thank
bro.
you.
Thanks for having me on. This is great.